Welcome Junior Tuckies, my name is Mrs. Ramlal. This video is on the section animal tissues, and this is a theory video in which I will be looking at the tissue cartilage. Now, before we look at cartilage, there's a very few notes or points or facts that we need to know. Now, we should know that cartilage is a connective tissue, because cartilage also connects different parts of the body together. Now, I've chosen, if you will notice in the videos, I've chosen epithelium, cartilage, and blood. And these are the tissues that normally you are asked in the next few years. Hence, the reason for me just doing lessons on these tissues. Now, before we even carry on, so let's look at the diagram. If you can see in this diagram here, you can see there's a label there, chondrocytes. Now, we know from our experience with cartilage that cartilage is rubbery and flexible. Now, the reason why cartilage is rubbery and flexible is because the matrix here, which is the substance in between the cells, has a protein called chondrin. And chondrin makes the cartilage rubbery and flexible. And as a result, because the chondrin is found in the matrix, the cartilage cells are called chondrocytes. Then, it says here chondrocytes in a lacuna. Now, here's one of the cartilage cells that I'm busy drawing, and then you have a fluid-filled space. So that fluid-filled space, that is now the lacuna. So these are some facts that you need to know that I'm always going to be looking at I'm always going to be using the word chondrocytes, lacuna, matrix. So we must know these facts first. We are going to use the word cartilage cells. You should know the basics. All right, so this is just your little introduction before we talk about the cartilage. Now, there are three types of cartilage. The first one is hyaline cartilage. And hyaline cartilage, let's look at how you're going to identify hyaline cartilage. So let's go to our picture. Here you can see the cartilage cells, or let's use the proper term, chondrocytes, are in clusters. Here in the picture, you can see them in 4s, 2s, 1s. Here you can see them in 2 groups of 4. So basically, that's the arrangement of the cartilage. We know there's the intercellular substance, or known as the matrix. But how you can identify this tissue is you can see that this the matrix is very clear. There's no fibers at all. So now, this cartilage, if you ever see it, it has a bluish whitish appearance or pearly glass appearance, right? This cartilage is very flexible and strong. We know that. We know there are chondrocytes in the lacuna. We know the matrix is made up of the protein chondrin. And we know that there's a special membrane that surrounds the whole cartilage tissue, and that's called the perichondrium. And this perichondrium has a lot of nerve fibers and blood vessels, and it supplies the cartilage with nutrients and oxygen and removes waste, and nerve fibers able to pick up stimuli from the cartilage. So that is the structure of the hyaline cartilage. Now, where do we find this cartilage? In your trachea, which is your main air pipe. You will learn this in grade 11. In your larynx, which is in your voice box, the tip of the nose, and between the breastbone and the ribs. You will still learn this later. And at the ends of our long bones. Now, if I draw an end of a long bone, at the end of the long bone, in red, I'm drawing the cartilage. So that is now the positions where you will find hyaline cartilage. We've already done the how to identify. So few fibers that we don't even bother to draw them. As you can see, you have not seen any fibers in this diagram. Now, let's look at the functions. You must know the functions of this cartilage at each of these places. Now, let's start off at the ends of the long bones. Bones move against one another and they help with movement. And if the bones rubbed against each other, that will cause a lot of pain and wear out the bones. So the cartilage is there to reduce friction, allow movement, but it allows movement in a certain direction and it reduces friction. Okay, so that's very important. Now, in the trachea, we know it's very important. It is made up of the C-shaped cartilage rings. And you will learn this when we do the respiratory system in grade 11. And the C-shaped rings in the trachea, so you have your trachea, that keeps the trachea open so air can enter and air can leave. So that's the function of the cartilage in the trachea. Right. Now, between the ribs and the breastbone, we know that forms part of your thoracic cavity, and there has to be cartilage between the ribs and the breastbone to be able to allow for movement of the thoracic cavity as you are breathing. And then, of course, you also learned in mitosis that the growth plate is known as the epiphyseal plate, and that epiphyseal plate is basically when you grow, that cartilage actually forms, and then the cartilage turns into bone. So it helps with growth of your long bones. Right. So that is hyaline cartilage. Right. Let's move on to white fibrocartilage. Now, let's look at this tissue now. You can see there's fewer cells, and you can see there's a special type of fiber that's running in a certain direction. Now, this is collagen fibers, and the collagen fibers are white, hence the tissue is called white fibrocartilage. Collagen fibers are extremely strong, so this cartilage is an extremely strong cartilage, and it's found in positions where you need extreme strength. And the reason why there's many fibers is to allow maximum strength, and there's many fibers, right, which are tightly packed, again, more strength. So, again, there you can see your chondrocyte and your lacuna, which you've already discussed, and then your collagen fibers. You will know it's a white fibrocartilage because the collagen fibers always run in a certain direction. Now, let's look at the position. So we've said many collagen fibers, so it's very strong, and the bundles take up the direction of the force. That means this fibers are running in the direction of the stress that's been placed on the body. Right. Now, where is this tissue found? In between your vertebrae. So, in between your vertebral column, there is white fibrocartilage. So, as you are walking, every movement you are making, that cartilage is absorbing the shock. And it's not allowing the vertebrae to absorb the shock as well. So, it's preventing the vertebrae from getting damaged. In between the two pubic bones, it allows for support and forms the hip bone. Pelvic girdle, okay, also allows for sturdiness and helps again to form the pelvic girdle or the hip bone. And then it's found in our sockets, in our hip and our shoulder sockets. So it can deepen your socket so that the bone fits deep in the socket to prevent dislocation. So these are now the functions of the white fibrocartilage. Shock absorbers. So every movement you're making right now, the cartilage is absorbing the shock. In the pubic bones and the pelvic girdles, allows for the sturdiness of that hip bone or that girdle and allows a reasonable small degree of movement. And in the sockets, deepen sockets to prevent dislocation. Right. Now let's look at the elastic cartilage. Now, here you can see again chondrocytes in the lacuna. And how are you going to identify that this is elastic cartilage? Here you can see the fibers branch in all directions, and it's a single fiber. And the reason for that is to give elasticity in all directions, and the elastic fibers allow for flexibility. And also, these fibers are yellow. So if you ever see this cartilage, it's actually yellow. So we've already know what a chondrocyte is and what a lacuna is. Now, let's go to where we find the elastic cartilage. We know there's more yellow fibers, very, very few collagen fibers. Elastic fibers branch out in all directions. This is found in the lobe of your ear, in your pinna. So it allows your pinna to be flexible. In your epiglottis, which is a special flap in your trachea, that every time you swallow, it closes to prevent any food, water, saliva from entering the air pipe. Your eustachian tube is a special tube that connects your pharynx to your middle ear. And then parts of your larynx. Parts of your larynx, that's parts of your voice box. We already saw cells are in ones or twos and only elastic fibers branched in all directions. Now, what's the function of this tissue, this cartilage? Allows the skin to stretch when you're breathing, so it maintains the shape of the different structures. Flexibility, so if you look at your pinna, it can stretch and it can stretch. You can pull your pinna right now, so it can help with directing sound waves, right? In your eustachian tube, it can also be stretched as you're taking in different amounts of air. The same thing with the epiglottis, it can be flexible, as well as the larynx. So it's very, very important, this tissue as well. Right. Thank you for joining me and watching this video on the cartilage. I hope you learned a lot. Join me and watch all my other videos as well.